Hey monkeys, how you doing? Damian here. So I'm back in Singapore. I had a lovely weekend in Bintan in Indonesia, having a rest, chilling out in the sea. But back in Singapore, I've got a lot of work to do before I go home on Thursday. Back in the UK on Thursday. So I want to talk about SoundCloud. If you've seen the news, SoundCloud is most definitely forefront of the news. And if you're a musician, this is stuff that you will know. If you need to know this shit. SoundCloud's in trouble. It's laid off most of their staff in New York. It's closed the offices in San Francisco. It's closed their offices in London. It's running, it has been running heavily at a loss for quite a few years. And it's been an amazing thing for 10 years. It's been a wild ride. And it's been a very, very big help for musicians, especially the musicians on the way up, you know. So it's a really great way of starting to actually store and store your music and get your music out there to people. But there's a massive problem, which is, as a business, it's flawed in so many ways. So I want to talk about whether I think, or whether SoundCloud can survive, and if so, what it needs to do to survive, and also how that will affect you as musicians, because most of you will have a SoundCloud account. Whether you use it a lot, probably a lot of you will. So this is quite worrying times, because whilst the big artists can carry on with their Spotify and other stuff, for artists like you guys, this is a really great way of underground bands sort of making a name for themselves and actually getting their music out there. Now, SoundCloud is a massively flawed business. In the last couple of years, it's just released its 2015 sort of taxes, I guess. And it's making about 17.5 to 20 million pounds, which is about 20 million euros, but it's lost about 50 million. So obviously you don't have to be a business genius to realize that that is a major problem, and it has done consistently lost money since it's, well, for quite a few years. And the reason why it's flawed is a number of ways. Number one, the business model is flawed in the way that streaming is an incredibly difficult way to make money. Not only because you need hands on deck, so you need to get people who are the engineers of the website, you need to actually get the salespeople for the advertising, you need to have all the outgoings for businesses, but also it costs a lot of money to license music, especially from the major record labels. And there's a couple of, I'm pretty sure Sony still hasn't bought into SoundCloud, which obviously all the majors have bought into some of the other streamers. Competing with Spotify and Apple is going to be very, very difficult. And Spotify have streaming with a monthly subscription service, which SoundCloud have started to do. It's probably a bit too little too late, I think. Now SoundCloud, whilst it's losing a lot of money and it's in the news saying it's having problems, there are options for it to be bought. It tried to do a merger with Twitter, I think in 2014, which was for £1 billion. I mean, that value's gone down heftily. Spotify flirted with the idea of buying it but didn't like it. Deezer is the new one that's come along, which is a French company. So it's got options for a buyout, but unless it can change its business model, it's still going to be fucked. And the reason for that is you can take your costs down, but there's only so much you can do. I mean, one of the things that when I was looking through it, one of the things is the average salary for someone who works at SoundCloud is 80,000 euros. That's about £70,000. As an average wage, it's just ridiculously high for a company that is losing that much money. So that's a major issue. There's also another issue, which is, like I said, streaming service is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But even if you can start to make it work with subscriptions, I mean, one of the main issues you've got is this idea I always talk about, which is people want music to be free. Or music is free. Not people want music to be free. They're happy to pay a subscription service for a thing as long as then they can get everything all for free. And if you're going to do that, you're not going to subscribe to 4 or 5 different music subscription services. You're going to subscribe to one. So it's a very, very competitive market. And if you look at the likes of Apple, Spotify, I mean, they have sewn this up, especially Spotify, they have sewn this up. So for SoundCloud to be able to take over, it's going to be very difficult. One thing that SoundCloud boasts is that they get more monthly users than Spotify. Now, if that is the case, then they shouldn't be in such a predicament that they are, because Spotify, as well as we know, Spotify do have, you know, they're not there just to make, well, they do lose money as well on them from month to month, but SoundCloud more so, and struggling and laying people off fast. Now the music community have come together, and obviously it's been a bit of a panic, but I liken this to, I've seen many bands over the years, underground, unsigned bands, push and push and push, and have really good fan bases, and after a while, many years, they decide to call it a day, and they just say, do you know what, fuck it, I'm just bored of playing to nobody, making no money, and struggling with the same old, so they decide to call it a day. And at that point, their fan base are up in arms. They're like, fuck off, you can't call it a day, this is terrible news. And all of a sudden, it feels like there's a resurgence in the band, and everyone's like, wow, we can get people to gigs. All of a sudden they've realised that we might go away, and the whole sort of community of their fan base gets together. The problem is it's very short-lived, because they do it for a gig or two and then it goes back to the same old. That is a problem with this, is the music community have got massive clout. Chance the Rapper is talking about what he can do to help. You know, there's other artists that owe quite a lot to SoundCloud. Kanye is another guy who constantly refers to SoundCloud. But unless the actual business model is changed, SoundCloud will be doomed, because you cannot bring in 20 million and spend 50 million. Even cutting the costs is not enough unless you change the business model, so you're cutting costs but also you're finding a way to monetize what you do more than just adverts. And that's another thing. I don't know how much you guys use SoundCloud, but SoundCloud started in 2007. If you look at the way that a lot of social media and these sorts of platforms have evolved over the last 10 years, it's been massive. If you look at SoundCloud, I don't think it's evolved enough. I don't think it's evolved as much as a lot of the other platforms. And with the amount of competition and with the amount of new technology coming out, you can't rely on what was 2007's technology. I mean, aesthetically it's shit. I mean, it doesn't look good enough. It's not competing. The adverts seems to have gone up. If you use SoundCloud on a regular basis, the adverts, they feel like a lot, and I can understand why. They're trying to make more money, so they're trying to advertise, so the adverts have probably got cheaper, meaning they probably needed to put more adverts on. So unless they change this business model, and unless they can actually affect the music industry community, the music community on a bigger level, and by that what I mean is having massive artists by the likes of Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift or Chance the Rapper who are saying, we are going to put some music on SoundCloud where it goes nowhere else except SoundCloud. Unless they do that, then their music is going to be on everywhere else, and it's too easy for people to just go, well, I've already got a subscription on Spotify, why am I going to then have another subscription on SoundCloud? And the unsigned market, which is the market that I feel the most strongly about, because I feel like SoundCloud for me is a champion of unsigned bands and bands on the up. And when it gets to the upper levels and the upper echelons, which I get where the money is, but when it gets to that level with Ed Sheeran, you're going to struggle to compete with Spotify, Apple, Google. You're going to struggle to compete with these guys. So I feel like there's a merger on the cards. I don't feel like it will be gone. I feel like SoundCloud will be there in some form or another. Like MySpace is still there. It's still a massive website. I feel like it will get bought out, possibly now by Deezer, possibly by Apple, possibly by Spotify, but it will have to change because it needs to find a niche. And for me, the niche for this has got to be the little guy. It's got to be the small up-and-coming bands, because if every band in the world, up-and-coming band, unsigned bands, has its SoundCloud and is pushing its SoundCloud, then there is a massive amount of views to be had. There's a massive amount of revenue to be had, because the little guys will use that more if there are more benefits for them, really. And I think that's the market. And I think, you can't be paying everyone £80,000 or €80,000 a year and having staff of hundreds and hundreds of people, their wage bill was 70 to 80 million euros a year. If you're going to have that, you are going to need a shit ton of income. So I don't think it's doomed. I think it's a problem, and I think unless they figure out what they are going to do to sort out the actual business model, and by that I don't just mean cutting costs and trying to find more advertising. I feel like if you're going to have a subscription service, you have to offer something better or different than Spotify, otherwise you're going to really struggle. So, and the thing that they do really well is they champion the little guy. Hopefully the music community will come together and do something, but I don't think it will, because everyone's selfish, and while Chance the Rapper really is striving to try and bring on and help SoundCloud, if you look at Ed Sheeran, what is Ed Sheeran? Why would he need to do something for SoundCloud and alienate Spotify or alienate Apple Music or alienate Deezer? There's no point in them doing that. So it's a very difficult thing for them to do, and it's a very difficult market. So for you guys, I feel like it's just something to be massively aware of, because it could go, and if it does, you know, your music is on there. I'm not saying it will be lost forever, but it is something you need to back up for the little guy. It is something you need to have and start building on other platforms. And you need to start looking around for what next thing is. If SoundCloud goes, there will be something else that will replace it for the underground scene, because there always is. I know DJs are using Mixcloud quite a lot. So I feel like it's troubled times for SoundCloud, and I don't feel like they're doing enough. I don't feel like they're modernizing their brand. I feel like things like, another thing that they could do as well is, if you look like playlists and things that Spotify are doing, their discovery of new music, which Spotify is really taking hold of. I don't feel like SoundCloud is doing that well enough, really. I feel like it's a bit dated. I think it looks dated. The whole thing for me just needs an absolute overhaul, and I think they're scrabbling around too little too late, in my opinion. So hopefully I'm wrong. I really like SoundCloud, but the other thing you need to sort out, SoundCloud, if you watch this, is your copyright issues, because it's a fucking nightmare, copyright issues that you have. So trouble times for SoundCloud. But for you guys, what you need to be doing is you need to be looking around at you need to be looking around at what you are going to be putting your music on next. If it is on YouTube, you know, all that other stuff. But if your SoundCloud is embedded in a lot of your other social media, just be aware of it, because it's something you are going to need to be on top of and change. And if you haven't seen the news about SoundCloud, it's something to be aware of. Cool, I have a shit ton of work to do, so I'm going to go. But I just wanted to do that piece on SoundCloud because it's just in the news, and I think a lot of people are worried about it, and rightly so. You should be worried about it and what to do next. So hope that's helped, and I'll leave you with a view of Singapore. But I'll be back on Thursday. Hopefully I'll do some more videos between now and then, but I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.